Hey guys, welcome back to Crusty Cranks, where we paint baits and make lures. Hey, have you ever had this happen? Sticky trigger? Yeah, me too. So, I thought today I'd run you through how I solved that problem and basically break down the airbrush and give it a good cleaning. And I'll show you what causes that sticky trigger. And hopefully, if you're having that problem, this will solve it for you. All right, let me get the camera turned around and we'll break this thing down, see what's going on. Okay, you can see I got a bunch of airbrushes here. Here's the one that was sticky trigger. Actually, they're all kind of sticky. So if it's a good time for a good cleaning, been painting a lot of baits, and you know, sometimes you got to take the time to break them all down and clean them up. And I'll show you kind of how I do it and what I use and the tools and chemicals and all that stuff. So the first thing to do is get yourself a little container that you can soak your parts in. All right, and then I save my little box here that my airbrushes come in, because they're good for little parts and stuff, because you never stick them back in the box, especially when you got a bunch of them and you're busy, you know. So in here, I keep everything. I've always got extra needles for the brushes. With the master airbrushes, I always have extra needles for, and just different parts, you know, in case something lose something or break something. You know, most of them are just extra parts that come along with it. So I throw them all in there. You definitely need one of these. And if you get an airbrush cleaning kit on Amazon, you pretty much get all these tools in your cleaning kit. But yeah, it makes a good little box to store your stuff in, extra parts and stuff. Okay, so but you definitely need a container to put your cleaner in and let your parts soak for a little bit. I'm just going to break one of them down. Actually, I might break two down. I might do the Iwata too, because I know a lot of people have the Iwata and it's actually sticking a little bit too. It's most of all the components are pretty much the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of this Windex in there. Get that in the camera. A little Windex in there. And that's what I like to soak my parts in. A little Windex. Now, if you're going to soak them overnight, Windex, a little water will work good. You can dilute it down just a little bit. But if you want to do a quick clean, then put yourself a little bit of rubbing alcohol. I use the 91%. And put yourself a little bit of alcohol in there. Now, I wouldn't recommend putting alcohol in and soaking them overnight because of the little rubber washers that are in there, the little rubber bushings. You don't want them soaking in alcohol for a very long time. But since I'm still painting baits right now, I got to get these cleaned up and get them all back in working order. So I put a little alcohol in there. It just kind of speeds up the thing. If you do put alcohol in and soak them overnight, you'll probably swell out the bushings. And, you know, that's not a good idea, really. Okay, so first thing first, take out your needle. Take this, unscrew this. And I know some of you guys have cleaned your airbrushes many times, but I've had some requests from some new people, new painters that like to know how to clean their airbrush. And some of you might need to clean your airbrush. Maybe you haven't cleaned it in quite a long time. So, you know, this will be a good video for you. Then take off this little part right here. Okay, put everything in your box so you don't lose nothing. All right, and just let it soak while you're cleaning. Then you should have got a little wrench with your cleaning kit. Maybe something like this. If it's an Iwata, you probably got one like this, and you probably got a little one too. So the nozzle tips are pretty much the same, but you only need this one for the Iwata. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this little needle valve out of here. Now, when we reassemble them, you're going to have to be really careful, and I'll show you why. Because there's some little threads on there, and if you tighten them dudes in there too much, you're going to break them off inside your airbrush, so you don't want to do that. Alright, so take that little tip out of there, put it into soak. This really doesn't get much, so it really doesn't need to soak, and there is a little bushing down in there, so I'll see it out and show it to you right here. Usually you can just wipe that off and stick it back in there, because it really doesn't get any ink or solvent in it unless you're overly crazy spraying solvent or cleaner down in there. But that little part there, you really don't need to soak. That's just part of my quick release. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is take the trigger out, and we're just going to pull this little thing back and pull the trigger out, throw it in there to soak. We're just going to let everything soak. All right, take out your control pressure, trigger control pressure. You can take that off too. Just basically break everything down, and just put it in there to soak for a little bit. On here, you got a little swivel for your trigger. You got a spring, and it's on a rod. Now, sometimes this will get built up with ink, and it'll slow your trigger down, cause your trigger to stick a little bit. All right, then down here we're going to take this apart. All right, we can go ahead and put our airbrush in there and let it soak, because we pretty much got all the parts out that we want to get out. So we're going to put that in there and let's let it soak for a little bit. And then right here we're going to take our tweezers, and you can get a tool for this, but I just use my tweezers, since I get so many tweezers. With eyes, they always send you tweezers. So take your tweezers and stick it down in here. I try to do this so you can see it on camera, and just unthread this thing. If you twist it backwards, drop it in, then you got a spring, and then you got this little accentuator rod. And that's most of the time, this is the part of your problem right here when your trigger's sticking. So we're going to throw all these in, and like I said, this has got a little rubber bushing on it, so you don't want to soak that overnight. And then we're going to soak this part right here. All right, so I'm going to let these soak for a few minutes, and then we'll clean them all out. I'll clean them out one by one, put it back together for you. All right, so I'll bring you right back when we're ready to put this dude back together. Okay, whoop, sorry, let me move this camera just a little bit. Okay, so we've been soaking, went and had a little lunch, let it soak for a little bit. All right, so we're gonna set this aside, and I'm gonna get the body of the airbrush out. And now a lot of people use Q-tips and stuff. I'm not a big fan of them because of the felt, the cotton that comes off and can get stuck in there. So I like to use these little cheap brushes from Walmart and just brush that out. If it's been soaking for a while, pretty much most of that stuff will be loosened up. You can see you kind of get a little foam in there, which is perfect. Then we're going to take our brush, our wire brush here. It's actually not wire, but it's a bristle brush, and get the right one and poke it down in there. That one's actually too big, but get the right one, and you can see this one's bent up because I push it all the way through to the bowl to where I can see it come out of the bowl. And that loosens a lot of stuff that's in there that's built up. which a lot of times, you know, will clog up your brush and you'll think you got tip dry. But this is what I wanted to show you right here. This stuff right here come out of there. See if you can see it. Get it closer. That big hunk of crap I just pulled out of there. And it's just paint that is dried up in there. And even when you think you cleaned it the best, you still got some dried up paint in there. There's some more. And like I said, I don't use Q-tips, so that's not cotton from a Q-tip. I used to, until I started seeing all that cotton in there and getting clogged in there, and I was like, man, this ain't good. Okay, so got that. And I always try to keep my bowls really clean anyway, so that way that stuff don't build up in there and end up going out the tip when you're trying to spray. All right. So run that through there a few times. Get that dude real nice and clean till you don't see any more stuff coming out the bowl, and you're pretty good. I know it's probably hard to see down in there, but that to me looks pretty good. All right, now we're going to take our bigger brush and we're going to go through here at the biggest one and clean this out real good. This is one of the reasons why your trigger sticks. There could be multiple reasons. You could clean this real good and it's still sticking. And I'll show you a couple other things that cause it to stick. But clean that out real good. Look down in there. Make sure everything's nice and clean. Down in this end. And that's why if you let it soak, you know, it'll loosen everything up pretty good. Now that brush right there, which has had a lot of paint put through it these last couple weeks, is all nice and clean now. All right, so let's put our little nozzle back in. And a lot of times when you buy needles, now this is a master airbrush. I didn't know if I mentioned that in the beginning, but this is the master. And I've got mostly all master airbrushes because I like them, because I can pretty much buy another airbrush for 40 bucks and get 3 needles with it. Whereas with the Iwata, I bought a needle, I think it was like $12.95 for a needle at Hobby Lobby. I've seen them up to 25 bucks for a needle, and sometimes they're hard to find on the Iwatas. So we got this little tip here soaking, and I don't like to run that this thing through there. You get one of these too. I don't really like to run that through there because you can blow that end out. And you want, if anything, use your needle. Okay, take your needle. Let's get our needle real clean. And if anything, just push it in and out a couple times. Don't jab yourself, which I've done. Push that in and out a couple times just so you can see that your needle's coming through there real clear, but don't push it through real hard. You don't want to flare that out on the end. Just push it through to make sure it's all nice and cleaned out. All right, now here's the tricky spot. When you put this thing back in, you have to make sure, and I'm speaking from experience here, you have to make sure that you don't over tighten this, because you will snap it off. It will snap right off and the threads will be in there. So be real careful. In fact, once I get it started, I go mostly all hand tight till I get it in there. And this is one of the little tricky things to get started. Okay, I'll thread it in, because there's a little rubber washer on there too, little bushing, a little seal is what it is. And you don't want to flatten that out, and you don't want to smash it down to where you break it. All right, once I got this on here, I'll get the little tool. I'll get as tight as I can by hand. I hope I'm getting all this on camera. I'm kind of leaning over the camera, so. All right, and I'll just turn it nice and slow. I think I got the stuff all over my hands. It makes it hard to hold on to it. Get it nice and slow. Just till you feel it snug up. I think I got there it is. Okay, nice and slow till you feel it snug up, and that's good enough. It's good enough right there. All right, you just want that seal to squeeze down just a little bit. Okay, all right, next we're gonna do the tricky part, which is put the trigger in. And before we put the trigger in, we're gonna clean it up a little bit. So just take your little brush, and it's pretty clean. I've seen people using like dental brushes, those work too, but these work fine as long as it's clean, soaked. All right, get in here. Right in here can cause you a trigger stick if that trigger's not floating or flexing around in there. It has to be able to move. All right. Drop my fingers a little bit. Now, you can lube this up. I'm going to show you what I use. This is called Airbrushing, and it's a moisturizer cleanser. You can get it at the drugstore, right? It's kind of like Vaseline, but it's not Vaseline. It's a makeup cleanser, and if you're a guy, they're going to look at you funny when you walk up there with this at the drugstore. But this stuff will also help keep your trigger clean in there. So you get a little bit on there, on your needle, or on your rod of your trigger. Put a little bit on your needle. The end of your needle, and take your needle and stick it down in there and move it around. You want to get a little bit of that stuff up in there, and you want to get a little bit on this little rubber seal right there. Okay. Then take and get your trigger back in and make sure you got your perforated edges going towards the front. And if I get this on the first try, it'll be amazing. This is the hardest part, is getting that needle or that trigger stem lined up. And I always do this first, so that way I can look in the bottom of it and see that if I got it in there. And I might have to pull it off of the camera for a minute just to get it lined up. But if you've taken it apart, you know how it is to get that thing back in there. So I'm still struggling trying to get it back in there. It's always trying to get it lined up. It moves on you. And there. Once you get it, you'll know it. It'll fall right down in there. Which is where the Airbrushing helps out a little bit too. It's always the tricky part that I dread when I'm taking this thing apart, is putting that trigger back in. Alright, I think we got it. There we go. When you look at the bottom, you can see that your trigger rod is in there. Okay. All right. Next, we're going to take our trigger pressure here, clean it off real good, and as you can see, when it soaks, it cleans up pretty good. All right, slide the rod on there, and then the little skinny part goes up. Stick it in at an angle, kinda, and then push it up through there. Once you got that in, then don't tilt your airbrush over because your trigger will fall out. All right, once you got that on there, take the next part, which is the adjusting nut, get it tightened on there. And this is where you can control your own pressure. Like some guys like them real loose. I kind of like them about midway, so I'll usually go all the way in and then feel the trigger and then back it out a little bit to wherever you like it. That's just kind of one of those preference things. But just make sure that you're snapping back and forth and you can see the rod moving over here. Already sounds cleaner. Okay. Next, we're going to put our, we always put our needle in last. Okay, so we're going to put our little accentuator here back together. All right. Here's another tricky spot where you could clean it all out and then you're still sticking. All right. Take your little brush and clean this out real good. Right here, because this is where that thing slides up and down. And sometimes it gets mucked up and that'll hang you up. All right. So we got that cleaned out. This little rod here, same way. Clean it up a little bit. Every little part here can stick. So get your little brush and brush it off. But if you soak it real good, you should be in good shape. All right. Same way with this little rubber seal right here. All right. Then I'm going to take and get a little bit of that Abilene on my finger. Coat it really good. All right, find my spring. Spring goes on the bottom part. Accentuator drops in. Oop, what am I doing? I'm doing it backwards here, sorry. Okay, spring goes in. Accentuator goes down through the hole right there. Now, I know somebody's going to say, well, doesn't all that collect dirt with all that stuff on there? Well, it does anyway. But the Abilene, it's kind of amazing how it keeps it from gumming up so fast. All right, now here's another little part that can get all gummed up, even though it's been soaking. And take my little brush and going through here. Everywhere where that little rod slides up and down, you want to make sure you clean it out real good. I've cleaned the whole airbrush, put it all back together, and then this little thing right here was the problem. So that's why I'm showing it to you. For sticking. Hit it with your tweezers. Line it down, push it in on there. And just watch out, because this thing will spring right out and you'll lose this little piece. So hold it in there until it starts threading. Get your threads all going good. Make sure you're not going in crooked. and tighten that up all the way. Check your spring, see if it's springing back real good. Wipe that off, thread it back in. Okay. It's gonna feel a little greasy with the Avaline, but that's okay. Just wipe everything down. Alright, so we're pretty much all back together. Everything's springing back, pushing down, popping back. Yep, feeling good. Okay, so put our needle in. Now be careful when you put your needle in. You don't want to jab it in there real hard and bend the tip. Go real easy, so don't tighten that up. Just put it on there, then tighten it up. Everything's springing back, looking good, looking good. Put this down on here. Now, I apologize, earlier I said it was saying ink. That's too many years in the printing business. It's actually paint, but all right, put some air to it. Everything's snapping right back. Fix the trigger. Put a couple drops of cleaner in there. Just make sure everything's blowing out real good. All right, one brush done. 4 more to go. I'm not going to put you guys through watching me do all that, but I hope that helped you out. Just to show you a couple quick differences with the Iwata. Right here, same thing with the trigger, accentuator, all that stuff's pretty much the same. It's got the same down here at the bottom. Take that out, clean all that up real good. Same thing here. With the Iwata, you got this wrench that takes this part off and basically take everything, break it down. And then right here you got your little tip. Take that out. Oh, I need the other tool for that, because it's a little different size. I thought it was the same, but it is a little different. There again, same with this one. Don't bear down on it when you put it back in there. Take everything down, break it down, let it soak, and put it all back together in reverse order, and you'll be in good shape. So hope this video helped you guys out. You know, there's nothing more frustrating than a dirty airbrush. So you know, try to keep your airbrush clean, and you'll be painting lots of baits before you have to break it down again. But I know a couple people have asked me about you know, sticky triggers, and it just so happened I had a sticky trigger, and I thought this was a perfect time to break the video down. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Got some paints coming up and some jigs coming up, and a new mold that I just purchased. Excited to show you. So yeah, stay tuned. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the subscribers. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Hit that like button and ring that notification bell so you get notified when we put up the next video. Always remember, stay crusty, my friends.